and welcome back to the iHealth channel and iHealth Radio. Hurricane H here. Today we were supposed to actually have a guest on the show, and unfortunately, due to the time difference, we were not able to make it today. We're going to have to reschedule the show. However, I decided to just do a different spin, and I've had just different discussions about MCO world, which is the world of managed care organizations in the past. And I know recently we had an actual career development talk show with a guest that discussed a little bit more about how to get path in the pharma world. And so in previous shows also we've talked about the broker world and what how to become a broker and so on and so forth. So I've had people ask questions about where do I how do I navigate the world of managed care. We've talked about obviously we defined it. We understand what it is, more or less, health plans, different, organizations like an insurance product type, company. But really, let's talk about the functions within and the opportunities that you might have, within that particular platform. So managed care organizations, there are, again, as I had stated before, and managed care organizations, health plans. There are insurance companies, and they manage the care of people. And that in itself is a lot of work and a lot of different things. It's a full business with every single concept you can think about. So obviously, with my background, we've talked more about the sales part of it or the marketing part of it, but there is more to it than just that. And I'm going to do a couple of things in this session. One is discussing the different options and different departments and how you can navigate and move in, what's your entry point, and so on and so forth. And then also we'll talk about some of the things I've experienced in terms of when we are recruiting, some of the hurdles, some of the things the observations that we see, in terms of, candidates, what they should probably, be doing better and so on and so forth. So just to give you some insights, I figured, let's just take the time since we are prepped for the show to get this going. Now, so again, managed care organizations, health insurance products or health insurance plans with products, how did they operate? We did talk about that in the past. So there's a lot of different things. Now, ultimately, depending on what your expertise, your background, your education, there are opportunities for you. A managed care organization, just like any other business, if not more than some other typical businesses, has a lot of different divisions or departments that have different needs and different talent requirements. And I'm going to just, kind of break it down slowly, one department by department, and maybe what you can see in terms of opportunities that you can apply for. So if you're looking for a good job, an employment that is steady, a career path, it is an actual path that I would consider. It is also the wave of the future. So in terms of industry and stability, it is very stable to a degree compared to other areas or other industries. One of the main things that I've been told before is that while even we had the 2008 crash and all that stuff, healthcare continued and the pace was still right and people still were hiring while maybe other industries were actually laying off people and dismantling jobs. So there's definitely a plus in that. Of course, healthcare is big. That's what the platform here is about. We talk about healthcare and everything, every aspect. Obviously, career paths, employment in healthcare are key. Career path in a managed care organization or insurance plan is key as well. So again, if you have not entertained it, maybe today based, on what we're going to discuss and what you hear, you might see yourself working within this type of, industry and or organization. So we'll start with my department area, which is sales, business development, marketing, and that's typically, one of the entry points. And so again, you have sales agents, and they have the specific requirements, and the requirements basically for Medicare sales, for example, is license and some certifications, obviously, some degree of education. I mean, we do not, at least for this particular role of sales, high school or GED, equivalent would work. They do not require more. Now, obviously, any degree you might have, college degree, associate, bachelor's, and more, will be a good and a plus for you as you want to move up in the ladder and hopefully get some more level enhancements in terms of your path. So you want to become a manager, a director, those things will become more relevant at that point. And also, if you're still new and still just out of high school, whatever, and you want to get started and you have the talent of sales, you want to get in that as you're going through college, that is also a way in. And when you do that, ultimately, as you get your degree and associate and then bachelor's, you'll just expand more. And that's the other thing. We've talked in the last show about careers in pharma. A lot of people go to school and they're not sure where they're going, which path. They study general stuff, and year one, year two, they're still dabbling. They're not clear about where to go from there. So this could be a good place, and it's almost like what we stated last time. You get started, then you find yourself, you find your niche, you find your actual direction, and then you move that way. And then you can tweak your credits in college and maybe your major at that point as needed. And we've the last advice we had there was about internships, and a lot of organizations do provide internships whereby you can experience a little bit the different tasks and job descriptions within a department or the organization. So again, so for sales, that's what I stated, license and so on. So that's for Medicare sales. If you're doing, for example, just a market development or business development, B2B, if you're on the long-term care side, or if you're on the some other aspects of marketplace and so on and so forth, you might need a different angle, because now you have to do a little bit more of a work with organizations. But again, in terms of degrees, it's the same thing. There may be not a need for the actual license, for the accident health license or any type of licensing for that. So again, that's just one angle. Then, within sales, I mean, it's just not sales. I mean, we have different things. There's sales operations. And so that goes from admin work, from retention units, from telesales, operations. There's training. There is special events. There's fleet management, if we have vehicles and things like that. There's community relations. So some of these areas all fall in within that category of the sales division or business development. So there's more to it. And each one of them can be an entry point. Each one of them does come with a decent package of financial gain, as well as benefits, medical, dental, so on and so forth. And a lot of these companies obviously do provide those types of benefits to you when you decide to join the companies. And of course, there's a lot of companies, by the way, so you can really select them. If you go on LinkedIn, Indeed, I mean, the jobs never end. I mean, you always find something when you look at any health plan. There's going to be something going on. So, and in some areas, it's more relevant because there is a little bit of a churn, in terms of staffing. Sales usually has that because of performance and things like that. So there's always going to be a continued interest in, having folks, interview and gain that. Now, retention is a big piece of sales, and because obviously the sales folks, bring in the business, and the other retention unit kind of retains it. And so the vision of retention usually requires no licensing, but it requires somebody with some sort of customer service. It's almost like customer service, but it's actually more of a proactive action. And we do a little bit more, not just to solve issues, but really just to do work with your members and help them get through the services, make sure that they are happy. You're basically ahead of the game with them. You can have some sort of a assistant, role within the department. Clerical roles are very accessible, and there's always, a couple of those positions within the department. Similarly, I mean, another entry point is member services or customer services. So that's a very must-have department. Every company in the health, in the managed care world has to have a department as such. And, depending on the products, depending on the volume of membership, the positions are always available. And there's also a need for multilingual, staff, and that's the other part in managed care, especially in the urban areas or metropolitan areas. The helplines that serve those communities, they do have to face diversity of membership, and so therefore cultural differences, language needs are important. So therefore, the teams usually reflect that. So if you have a talent and you speak multiple languages, that's a very good area to be in, because that gets you in the door of a plan. And then ultimately, as you build your time, and I've seen this happen, a lot of folks within customer service, they use that as an access point, and then they eventually develop themselves into a better role, or find another transfer, another role in another department and transfer to it. Ultimately, as they enhance their education potentially, they can also find some other roles that are more in terms of the hierarchy or in terms of just the content of it. Some folks maybe go into nursing school while they're actually in that role, and ultimately they wind up, in a care management unit, and that's a whole different world. So, so customer service is another angle that's important. Now, go back to the retention. We've talked about to sales. We talked about retention, and we have also special events, for example, and community relations. Uh, Very key roles. As a health plan, I mean, you do have to present yourself in the community. You have to have a presence, and you need people to do that. Now, you do have agents and sales agents, but their role is really to identify, educate, and enroll members into the product lines of any particular plan. However, they do business to business, things like that, but it's not the same as to have dedicated folks, and their main role is to actually go and identify opportunities, develop partnerships in the community, nurture those relationships, and that relationship can be from building up with elected officials, with faith-based organizations, FBOs, community-based organizations, CBOs, local businesses. Also, putting the word out there. These are not public relations. That's another area that usually is guarded by either legal or compliance, and those are different pieces of the aspect of the business whereby these people actually do lobbying and things like that, and really PR, and sometimes even that falls under communication and marketing. But in the area of community relations is more about the work in the community and connecting with the community and developing things in the community for the community. And then ultimately that leads to special events. Now, special events, it's, as it sounds, it's like festivities, happy stuff. And that can be from someone that is actually going to be a coordinator of events in the community. So we have a relationship with a particular community organization or a church or synagogue or mosque or temple, and they have a holiday, and we need to do some sort of an activity with them to basically highlight the actual products we have, because the products that a plan would have, they will be needed in the community. We're talking health, we're talking government programs, for example, whether it's for children, for adults, or for seniors. There's a need for insurance for all of us, and therefore that needs to be shared with folks. And there's competition, so you want to be able to present your offerings, accordingly within the community. So, for that instance, I mean, if I was the special, events coordinator, I will speak, to those folks, in the community relation department. They'll connect me, they'll have some sort of a connection within that particular organization. Then we will talk about an event. A potential could be an open house, it could be a presentation, could be a health fair, could be music, could be anything, just to entertain the folks, after a service. Again, there could be many things. And after that, it could be some kitchen sponsorship, things like that. But that particular person will actually have to identify the venue, set up the venue, set up the supplies for that, make sure that they have staffing for that particular event, so on and so forth. So that's a role right there, and that's a big role because again, grassroots. There's marketing, general marketing, and there's the street marketing or grassroots marketing, and that is actually where you are in the community working. And so that's an opportunity right there. So someone that has events planning, someone that loves to do things in the community, these roles will be ideal for you. And again, any language you might speak addition that helps as well because you can navigate different communities and ultimately be able to understand the cultural differences and things like that, and be able to cater and tailor things to them. So that's an event. Then within a department, for example, we need sometimes training. Obviously, training is important in everything. Learning is important in everything. And sometimes training specifically is run by an HR division. They have their own learning and development, or sometimes it's a unique department on its own. But typically in the world of managed care and in sales, we always have a component of sales training or training in general and learning development. And again, because we want to make sure that our folks are engaged, they're trained, they're educated, they're up to date with regulations, with rules and compliance and so on and so forth, tactical stuff, strategy. So all that stuff, gets implemented. So that's another area. So if you have the talent to train and exchange ideas and basically get people engaged, that may be an area for you. Again, something to consider. And there's always, a need for those, and they are scarce. I mean, unfortunately, there's not a lot of people that actually go for this particular role. and but it may be there available, and you might have the talent, you just have not seen it, or you have not thought about it. Typically, we would need some sort of experience in terms of that, but depending on your personality and so on and so forth, if you got an interview, it's important to have at least some backing of how you're going to present yourself, and we'll talk about that shortly. So that's kind of like more or less in the realm of the sales division. We talked about customer service. Similarly, there's also different levels in all these departments. There's entry points. There's sales supervisors. There's managers. There's senior managers. The directors. The VPs, and it goes all the way up the ladder to a chief level or EVP type. So again, all these are the different things, and each one of them has a different ability or different capacity or a different scope of work. And the higher you go, certainly it's very simple. I mean, it's not rocket science. We all get it. You go up. I mean, your responsibilities are different. A lot of people would rather be responsible for themselves. I really just want to be a rep, an agent. I just want to go in, clock out, do my work, and leave. Schedule done. Some people want to go to the next level, and now you're responsible not only for yourself, but responsible for teams and for performance of other folks. It is sometimes easier to control your performance, but it is harder to actually control other performances of people that work under you or with you, and their performances. Sometimes it's difficult. And also, you have to have the skills set for it. You have to have the personality. Not everybody's made to be manager or supervisor. And then, of course, as you advance in management, and that kind of level, then you get into the higher level of leadership, where now you're exposed to vision, strategy, tactical stuff, planning, and so as a director, you direct an operation. So now you have multiple teams under your belt, and there's a lot of activities that you need to be involved with. And then, of course, now you manage north, I mean, up and down. So you manage your teams, and then you manage your hierarchies. So you basically your senior level staff, and so that's an important. So you basically a buffer between corporate decision and field execution. So in the middle there, you have to be able to maneuver in both sides and manipulate things correctly to make sure that you convey the message correctly, get the folks to actually buy into the concept and make it happen. Now, this is not just for sales; this is all departments. These types of hierarchies are important to understand, and depending on your background, depending on education, depending on a lot of things, your personality, your success, your ability to have to demonstrate it, ability within the realm of the division or the department can also make the opportunity for you to move up to that next level important and easier to obtain. So again, another area that is big in the MCO world, which is a very also important role, and we're going to have a show coming up just to talk about that division, is the provider relations or network development. And that's big. So as it sounds when I say provider, so health plans, they seek members, they bring members, but then these members are cared for through a network of providers. And the providers here can be hospitals, doctors, clinics, laboratories, and so on and so forth. And you have to have a contracting division that does that. A division that not only contracts with providers, but maintains the relationship with the providers. I mean, doctors have to go through certain processes and credentialing. That's another piece of it. So you could be doing credentialing within the actual company within that department. Credentialing means you have to go through vetting the doctors. They don't have any malpractice and so on and so forth and stuff. I don't want to give a lot more on the details because our guest speaker will actually dive into it more. So, but that's an area. So again, that's an area that is important. It is vital. It's in the health plan. There are a few things that you actually present. You present the products, you present the care, the customer service force, and you need to have a network. And if you have all these things correctly, then you have a good offering. You got a good plan to present in the community. So within the provider relations, also there's sales components. There are these account executives, and they basically are salespeople for the providers. They maintain the relationship. They're really, B2B, that kind of thing, personalities. And we talked in pharma, you have these pharma, for reps. Well, these are the provider reps, and they basically also reside within the provider world, and they just live with doctors and, with clinics and so on and so forth, managed care, or, departments and administration, and they leverage their relationships. As a matter of fact, when I mentioned earlier about special events and community relations, those folks can also sometimes work with the provider department and providers because they can do some activities together as well. And most of the providers will have their own community relations team, and then basically they work together as partners and make things happen for both the plan and that particular provider. So again, providers department or network development, under the provider's realm is big, and it's a big, big, big component in the operation. These are all the kind of front end stuff. And then you have now the biggest and the core element. And the core element is health plan, health, care, health plan cares for you. Guess what? We need care managers. Now we're talking about nursing. So in a health plan, I mean, if you have a nursing degree from an LPN up, you can possibly, get into the plan for these types of opportunities. And again, they vary. I mean, in the health plan, you have from LPNs to really doctors, and I'm talking MDs, or sometimes, NPs, of course, and then you have the medical executives or the medical chiefs. And so because again, there's decision making in terms of when you go in and you go to, for example, a doctor, and a doctor submits a request for you to get some sort of a service or some sort of a procedure done or surgery or uh, lab work, radiology. Guess what? That needs to get authorized, and then there's a team in the back that needs to evaluate the need, and they need to have clinical expertise. So they're basically nurses or doctors that actually evaluate and either accept or deny these types of requests. And again, there's protocols for that. That's a whole different discussion. So again, if you are in the world of nursing, or you anticipate to be in nursing, or if you want to get into nursing, a good place to be, a good place to operate as a nurse would be in the world of managed care. And it's a pretty good path as well. And there's different levels. And as well, like everything else, you can start as a staff care manager and then become a supervisor, manager, director, VP, and so on and so forth. If you are, some folks are, if you're a medical field, obviously you can become the chief medical officer. You can be a medical, officer or a medical director in the plan to basically evaluate things. And then you have nurses and other potential doctors who are reporting to you to discuss cases and things like that, and the protocols and so on and so forth. That's a big piece because again, at the end of the day, you can bring members, you can service members, you can have the doctors, but you need to have the care managers that will actually work with the members and authorize things. But also the care managers, their role is in advance to that is really to help members get the care they need. So they understand that they put care plans for them. They make sure that they get their medication, so on and so forth. They might have to schedule home care if needed, and so on and so forth. So the role is very robust, and again, it varies in terms of which plan, which product, the company has to offer. Then, of course, you have other units that are just as essential. We're talking about recruiting and opportunities. Well, there's no opportunity and recruiting without a talent acquisition team or an HR department. So sometimes they're one, sometimes they're separate. So talent acquisition, as it sounds, is the department that recruits people, that kind of vets out, and finds out talent, identifies talent, and based on the needs of each department, they work with the departments directly. And again, there are agents within that department, or like representatives or account executives that work with assignments. So, for example, someone works with sales and marketing and public relations. Someone works with the other divisions. Every department has recruiter needs, and so these recruiters within that division or account executives will actually work with the department to identify talent, from the community by putting ads, by doing job fairs, and so on and so forth. That's an area. Of course, within the same department, again, different levels, different hierarchies. They usually there's directors, VPs in each one of those divisions. And then you have human resources, which can be a lot, from benefit administration to HR issues and labor law and so on and so forth. And there's different components in there as well. Again, another area, if that's what your background in college, or that's something that you look forward to, you can do that. Now you're talking about a health plan. So guess what? We do benefits, we do this, but the purpose of it, obviously, it's a business. There's revenue, and so where that revenue goes, how does it work? Who's going to handle that revenue? Who's going to process all that? And make sure that the books are right, make sure that everything is happening. Well, there's a finance division, and so if you're into finance or accounting, there is a room for you in the world of managed care. So you can be basically from accounts receivables, accounts payable. They have CPAs within the health plans, and of course they have chief finance officers and different and clerical staff as well. In all these areas that I mentioned, there's always admin work that's needed. So there's people that need to come in as entry level. So if you want to get your feet, went into the business and you like have a little background in accounting or some sort of a finance, background, that could be an entry point, and ultimately you work your way up. Uh, and as you go to college and get to degrees and get to some licensing, maybe you can advance to the next level, CPA, so on and so forth. There's also, because in health plans, I mean, you don't become an insurance agency without having to have some sort of a legal contract, with the state you operate in and with the federal government. So certainly there is regulatory affairs, and there's also compliance, and and then there's legal departments. So sometimes there's legal, which is totally separated from regulatory or from public relations or public affairs. Those can be, sometimes across, in the other side or within those departments. But compliance is a very big, department that makes you basically they check. They're the checks and balances. They dot the I's and cross the T's. They make sure that everything is correct, everything is regulatory, everything is compliant. Because especially when you work in the government, world programs, you need to make sure that you're subsidized by the government. You're getting, federal money or state money, and you're responsible for it. You are accountable, to it. So therefore, you have to make sure that you're um, accountable, and you have somebody, some department, some unit that does that for you as a helpline. So if you have a background in anything regulatory, legal, um, those are the things that you might need, or compliance in general. Health, public health, these can be areas where you are needed. And then you can be in the compliance division. And what you do is basically make sure that, every department is, policies are in place, protocols are being observed, everything is done correctly, and so on and so forth. And you work with all the other divisions, and, whether the government as well as the internal departments, to make sure that on an annual basis everything is met correctly. There's no cutting corner or so on and so forth. Big division, very important role, to keep, a license active. If a plan messes up and, there's non-compliant, process or non-compliant, things that are happening, the plan can get shut down by the government. And so, or they can have hefty penalties that are being demanded, that they have to pay back to the government if whatever the case may be, a unit or a particular process has not been observed correctly and or non-compliant. So that's compliance. Again, we talked about legal. Legal basically is the department that sometimes checks out everything. When within managed care, just like everything else, you have vendors, you have contracts, you have employees, you have labor law, you have so many things. And so sometimes you have specific departments that have their own lawyers. For example, HR may have an HR lawyer or an HR counsel, and then you have the general counsel, which actually operates overall and make sure that everything is legally sound and there are no risks for the company, or risk assessments are being done to these folks to make sure that the plan is sound and there's no headaches. Plain and simple. So again, we live in a world of technology. You cannot operate in a world today without computers, without tech. And so there is a huge division in most of these plans, which is basically ITIS. And that's basically the folks that make sure that you have platforms, you have systems, you have, your phone is working, you have technology, systems that operate for operations. For each department, you might need certain, tools to use. Like for example, in sales, we use CRMs or lead generating or lead, management, platforms such as Salesforce and so on and so forth. In other departments, they might have other types of systems that they need to process things with, to enroll, or whatever the case may be. So again, that's a big unit, and there's people for software, there's people for hardware, there's people for telecom. So all those are very important pieces and components that are needed in the back office to help. Some companies, of course, they choose third parties to use for that, but there's always a unit of IS or IT that is needed there. So again, if you have an interest in IT, IS, business, all those technical, backgrounds of education, can be a place for you, and you can find your way in. There's also programmers in some plans where you have to have a programmer to do certain things, and program some internal systems. So that's another component that you can see yourself as a career path within a managed care organization. There's also claims. Now we talked about providers, we talked about care management, membership, and stuff. But guess what? I mean, doctors got to get paid. So there's a whole claim division where they process claims. You go to see a doctor as a member, the doctor sends a bill to the plan that needs to get paid. So that there's a processing, department and unit that does all that and make sure that the codes are correct. There's all the information that's required, that the procedures that are done are correctly met, and so on and so forth. Ultimately, they're the ones who generate that payment to that provider. Once that they do their job, then it goes to finance, and then that's paid out. So that's claims. There's also enrollment. We bring in members, right? And so there's enrollments and new membership that comes in on a month-to-month basis, on a day-to-day basis. There are people that process that. So there's enrollment coordinators, there's enrollment supervisors, there's management, VPs, and so on. Intake process is in there. So that's very important to get the job done. Members don't just get processed without a whole unit that interacts with the state or the federal, depending, or even just basically just processing the applications or submissions. So that's another area. Some of those roles can be also entry point that require clerical, administrative, or sometimes even more advanced, education as you would like to grow within that particular department. So we talked about most of the divisions right now. So I'm trying to think of what else is out there. Claims, finance. Sometimes you have transportation within the company, or ancillary type of things that happen within the company. And you might need some departments that operate. So sometimes you have fleet management or just operations. Sometimes you have also building management and property management that work for the company. Some companies have buildings and have their own facilities, so they have facility management teams and that operate and make sure that everything is getting done. So the lights are on, the safety systems are on, so on and so forth. That is a big deal, and it's important. Somebody has to make sure that the supplies of the company are in place. So there's also procurement, areas where you can be in a department where you're the ones that are actually going to be managing all the requests, for all the departments and of their supplies and needs, what's needed, for them, whether it's paper, whether it's faxes or printers, and, toners, you name it. Then there is, the component that works side by side in general with marketing, with sales, and that's marketing. Sometimes marketing is the umbrella. Sometimes sales is the umbrella. Sometimes marketing and communications. So marketing is basically, the body that promotes the plan, not in direct, component, but like the branding, the image, the communication to the members, and so on and so forth. It's what's written, what's out there, what's visual, what's audio, and then ultimately it has to go to compliance for approval, and sometimes even legal for approval. So that's another. So if you have a background in marketing, creative marketing, social media, design, flyers, and so on and so forth, website, these companies do have a need for you, and you can also find a path that way as well. So just right now, I've enumerated almost all the different, divisions that I can think of, and there's more to this operation. So that's just to give you an idea that no matter what your background, there is a potential chance for you to be able to work in a managed organization and grow there. And you don't even have to leave that company or that particular industry, because there's a lot of them, and there's always a need for talent. And if you're good, you're always going to be marketable, and you can always, grow in your own, path within the company, or find another place where you can grow as well. Now that I've covered, most of these things, and if something comes back, I'll just jump back to it. Now I'll talk about some of the observations in terms of and pointers about when you want to be, recruited. So this happens all the time, and I'm constantly interviewing people in my regular world, and so different roles within my division. And one of the main pet beefs that I have is that people, for example, schedule interviews and they don't show up. Right. So again, you want the first impression. We can make a second one. That's always the key. The first one is everything. And when you set up an interview, so you like the path, you pick up, a department that matches your needs, company is interested in you, you schedule an appearance in an interview, whether physical or remote as Zoom or something like that. Either way, you know, you don't show up. That's a problem. Uh, you know, you might not get a second chance. So if someone is actually interested in working, just like any other business, profit or not profit, it doesn't matter. When there is an opportunity, the management team, whoever you are going to be, the recruiters vet you out, and then ultimately they put you into the next level, or maybe the next level. Sometimes it's a panel interview, sometimes an individual interview that goes to the next level and next level. Sometimes it's a multiple, director, manager, VP, that kind of thing, presentation. Either way, if you have an interview, make sure you make it. If you have any circumstances where you cannot make it, don't wait until the same day or like that morning of, unless it's an emergency. That's understandable. But people just don't show up. That is completely wrong. That is not a good impression. That is definitely something that will just ruin your opportunities within the company, not just within the department. Because a lot of the department heads, they talk, and obviously they have regular meetings. And if someone comes in, they say, oh, this person, and recruiters know also. So if you mess up with one area, and that may be a problem. Another thing that I've noticed in this particular world of ours is that we post a job description for a particular role, and you get people that have no clue of what they're applying for, and they have nothing to do with that particular role. They just apply. Understand, that it's not going to work. For the most part, we look at, the job description and the relevant experience that we're looking for, whether it's the experience time, whether it's the type of sales or the type of role that you were in before, all that stuff. Maybe sometimes languages, whatever the case may be. If you're applying for a sales rep job, you cannot be, for example, doing something totally different, because we're going to need sales experience. Now, some people say, well, if I don't have the experience, how can I get the experience? That's totally true. It's very difficult, but depending on what you're like, some roles you will apply for, doesn't matter. You don't need experience. You just need to be able to present that you can do the job. For example, if you go into customer service, guess what? You have personality, you've done some work, even if you're right off college or you're still in college, there's still going to be an opportunity depending on your personnel skills. So that may work. But if, for example, we are requiring somebody with experience 5 years in Medicare sales and you have no clue of Medicare, chances are the resume is not going to make it, and that's just it. So, and similarly, if someone, I'm looking for a community relations person, and I get a candidate that has no clue what that is, or never done the work. Community relations work is not easy. You have to be able to knock on doors and call on uh, assemblymen, council members, senators, and so on and so forth. Community organizations, and pastors, and so on and so forth. You have to have that personality and the ability to do it. So that's not, if someone is applying for an events coordinator, but they never had an event in their life, or they never actually took time to put an event together, that's not going to work. So again, make sure that you apply for the right role. If it's a vague role, or if it's a general role, a lot more people can fit in, but there are specific roles that actually demand certain specific expertise and skills. And if you don't have them, it's not. So when I look at, a list of resumes that come in, they get easily moved to the side. Yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, based on exactly what I'm looking for. And so that's another piece of advice. Again, this is not a critic, in terms of a negative. It's more to reinforce, some of the things that you might already know. But the idea is just plan correctly, do it correctly, and so on and so forth. Just know what we expect, what the clients will expect, and that's how you can meet, the demand, and certainly, be able to get to the next level and make it happen. Some people show up to the interview, but they don't look like they're prepared for the interview. They have not, they have no clue what the company does. Or they don't even go on the, it's easy to, you can go on any website of any company before you go in and just read a little bit about it. So at least you have an idea what the plan does, what the company does. That's one. Two is make sure you have some copies of your resume, right? Make sure it's updated, because again, and these are basic things. Any recruiter, any HR, type of seminar or career development seminar will teach you these things. And there's plenty of stuff online. There's YouTube and so on and so forth. But again, these are little pointers that should help guide that. Don't be all over the place. Don't oversell. I mean, you are selling in an interview, but you can, as they say, you can't bullshit the bullshit artist. If you are in an interview, you know that that person in front of you has done a lot of those and understands, the gimmicks. And if you are just, full of fluff, they'll read right through it. Don't give, vague answers. We look at stars, which basically, if you tell me like, oh, tell me three things about you, I'm great. What does that mean? Don't tell me you're great. Tell me, what does that mean? Give me a real concrete example. Stuff like that. So it's important that you really break it down, be prepared, have the personality, and so on and so forth. Also, listen to the question, just don't mumble, and until you make sure that things like that. For example, I do role plays in interviews. So I ask someone, let's do a role play. So I become a client, and you're basically going to do the role and sell me something. They say the first thing is, oh, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do. When I say role play, I'm not asking you to tell me what you're going to do. I'm asking you to do the role play with me. It's like a movie. You're acting, action, go. And then basically, I'm a client, and really is. So I'm going to be just your client. I'm going to literally put myself in the shoes of a client and demand, insurance or service, or whatever. This is just an example on my type of interviews. But in every department, if you go into customer service, I'm going to give you an example where, hey, there's a situation. How are you going to handle it? And then let's role play. Then I'm going to talk to you. Oh my God, this, I have this problem, blah, blah, blah. And then you have to tell me, you're going to give me a little scenario, how you're going to handle that situation. Now, we don't usually demand the expertise and the knowledge of the product, but we just want to see the personality. I just want to see how you handle it. Your approach is more important than anything else at that point. So again, things like that, small pointers, hopefully they can help you, get better. So those are the major things that, that are no-nos. And, never talk bad about your other previous employer. That's another thing. If the minute you go in, I ask you like, well, why are you leaving your management sucks. Well, the minute you say that, it's like, there's like three red flags that just went up. I mean, you're saying that about them, you might not see eye to eye. And then for me, like, well, there's got to be a reason. There's always another story, right? There's yours, you sell in because you're interviewing. However, maybe if I called your boss or manager, whoever in that role, it might tell me something otherwise. Maybe there's a compliance issue. Maybe there's, a performance issue. So stuff like that. Don't lie. That's the other thing. I mean, people say, well, like, how was your performance? Oh, it was great. And, and then all of a sudden we're having a discussion. Oh, I know that person. Their performance was not good at all. See, that will kill your chances right there. Stuff like that is important. Don't say it. Make sure if you give facts, give the stuff correct. Never bash other places. Make sure also your stories are good. Together. Meaning sometimes in a resume you have different dates and different things, but then the person is not able to really articulate with the resume. Somebody else may have put that resume together. The dates may not be on the right stuff, and then I'll be like, whoa, wait a minute. You just said this, but I don't see that here. The order is different. Also, sometimes there's gaps in a resume. You be prepared to explain, what those gaps, were about. People are entitled to stop working for personal reasons, whatever the case may be. They may be going into their own ventures, didn't work out. They want to come back in industry. I've had that. It's not a big deal. Just make sure you share it. The key here is, you're going to an interview for a career path, and that's the other thing. Don't look at it just a job. I'm just going to get in and see what happens. You're going to path, what we're looking for and what people will look for, whether recruiters or management, is, are you going to be a flight risk? You come in and out, or are you doing this just as a bridge, just to patch up between one and the other until you get the better opportunity? Those are things that we all can consider. And so if it indicates whatever, as you're talking and we feel that those things are happening, it just diminishes your opportunities and your chances of getting and landing the role. So again, those are just few pointers. I can tell you from this platform, I've interviewed thousands, not hundreds, thousands, okay, of folks over the last 25 years. Okay. And not everybody makes it, and it's unfortunate, but there are requirements, there are personalities, there's less. And some interviews, I mean, from the minute the person walks in, that's the person you want. Because everything I stated is there and there's more. It is the energy, there's the ability to actually articulate correctly, the ability to actually present the stuff correctly. Now sometimes they have all that, but they still rough around the edges. And we know that, when someone comes in, our job in the world of management is to train, coach, mentor, and build and mold people to the next level and make them good at what they do. So training and so on and so forth. So if there is growth in you, we will take you. But if the core that we're looking for is not there, that's a problem. There are certain things we cannot train you. You know, if you have, like someone walks in the interview, you can hear them. You're like, can you please speak up? Uh, it may be just a personality thing. So if I'm talking, if a role has to do with being on the phone, for example, you need to articulate, you need to have a personality that people are going to see. They're not going to see you visually. If you're going to be in the field, in a facing, environment, that's different. If you're going to present, some people don't know how to present in public, for example. That's okay. Depending on the role, you don't have to. I mean, some roles do that. Now, if you're working with providers, there's a certain personality that's required for that, right? So if you're working with the government, it's another stuff. You need to know your stuff and have the personality to do this. So every area has its own need, and there are different variations. A lot of the stuff I covered right now is pretty much standard, that everybody's going to look for. So again, when you apply, make sure you get it right. Make sure you follow through. It's very nice to always say, hey, how we doing? Follow up with a small thank you for the interview, blah, blah, blah. The other thing, when you come into an interview, I've seen this happen when people walk into the interview and they're like dismantled all over the place. Oh, I got to do this, I got to do this, making phone calls. Believe me, it is not appropriate. It's a quick turn off. I'd be like, okay, sure. Now you still have to contact the interview to a degree, and you try to get more to see if there's any potential there. But eventually, if there is nothing there, thank you very much for coming. We'll get back to you, and that's where it ends, and basically you don't make it. So again, there is opportunities in managed care. There's opportunities in the MCO world. Uh, I've covered quite a bit of potential. Like I said, there's from entry point to highest level. There's so many things you can do with different backgrounds of education. You can still be there and be there forever. There's good money to be made, and certainly, it's a good place to be. It's a good industry, and again, healthcare. We all have a need for help. It's not going anywhere. There's always going to be, no matter what, we're talking about Medicare, Medicaid. Maybe in the future there's some sort of a new form that comes up. The marketplace, whatever the concepts, commercial insurance, they're all about the same. And so health is big, and the health industry is big. There's also, I forgot to mention, a big one, a component is the pharmacy department. There's pharmacy department as well within, for example, in actual health plan. And there are other areas within finance like actuaries. That's important too. So there's areas that if you're a mathematician, whatever, and you have some actuarial background, that can be stuff. If you're a pharmacist, there are areas within. I mean, health plans do have directories and formularies and so on and so forth. You need people that have pharmacy background or pharmacists to be able to do that, right? So and I apologize, I couldn't think about it earlier, but those are another two areas that definitely would be there. Um, so there's very much something for everyone out there with any type of background education. You can do it. Look up in LinkedIn, Indeed. If you're looking at a growth opportunity and a good stable place to be, you can do it. You can make a path for you in it. Again, if you're looking just for a job, it may not be the place to be. If you're looking for a career, that's where you can go and find yourself in. It's very professional. And there's opportunities. A lot of these companies also give good benefits. A lot of these companies have sometimes tuition reimbursement, and they encourage you to go and get upgrades in your education and so on and so forth. And sometimes it's 100% paid. I mean, so take advantage of those opportunities and grow with it. I mean, people come in from an entry point and they make it. I personally had that same path. I started as a sales representative, made it all the way to the chief level, which basically in my department would have been the most you can go up to. So it's up to you how you want to go, where you want to go in that department, whatever you want to do. But the idea is, there's an opportunity. It's a great industry. It's not easy like everything else, but there's no job that's easy. What's easy about it is how you make it. If you enjoy what you're doing, you're never going to work a day. So pick the right path for you that's going to make it for you and make it happen. Um, that's it. So from the iHealth channel, iHealth Radio, I hope that this particular episode of the MCO world cleared a little bit of things and maybe opened up, an opportunity for someone that may be, not sure about where their, next step is going to be in terms of their career. This could be a good place to start, something worth investigating and looking into. That being said, Hurricane H here. I will talk to you soon. Bye.